The Bayou Classic 50th Anniversary Preview, sponsored by Care South Medical and Dental.
The best day of the year is finally here. Southern Grambling, an hour away from kicking off the 50th edition of the Bayou Classic. I'm Pat Timlin. He's Reggie Flood.
Hello, everybody. Pat, it's good to be here, man.
Of course, right now the bands are on the field entering the dome. The players are lacing up for the biggest game of the year. Everybody anticipating this. Folks, the all-time series sits at 25 wins for the Jags, 24 wins for the Tigers. It doesn't get better than this. Buckle up, because we got a jam-packed hour. Let's get going with our top storylines. How about this? Terrence Graves, the man in charge leading the Jags into the dome, the interim head coach for Southern, calling the shots as the Jags fresh off of firing Eric Dooley. We'll see more of that a bit later, but what does he bring to this team now in charge of the Jags?
30 years of experience. Coach Graves has been on both sides of this game, coached at Grambling for a while, coached at Southern. This is his second trip around at Southern, so he brings that kind of experience to the table. He can get these guys ready to go for a big game like the Bayou Classic, just off of experience alone.
Yeah, and here's how the coach said, it's hard to deal with situations when you lose your head coach. Here's how he helped the players reset and get ready for the Bayou Classic.
We gave them 48 hours. Gave them 48 hours to get it out of the system, and then it's time to get back on the horse, ride, and go to work. So what we did that. And those guys, when I tell you that they have been practicing with a great energy, we had a really good day on Saturday. We ended the practice with what we call a scout bowl, and so that got everybody excited. So the guys are revving up, ready to go. They were up this morning at 6, 7 o'clock, lifting weights, going to class. So it's just been good. Everything's been good.
Let's look across the field to the G-men, who are trying to finish off the second season under Hugh Jackson with a winning record, the first one in North Louisiana since 2019. How have you seen this program grow under Hugh?
Well, that's been the question. Has the program grown under Coach Hugh Jackson? If you look at what's going on at Grambling, they finally got a quarterback that I believe that he can count on and that he believes in. They have a nice run game, so they have seen some growth, got a few wins this season, but I think to their fan base, they're underachieving. They expect more. So I think this is a huge game for Grambling and Coach Hugh.
Sounds like a team that we cover in blue and gold. Certainly, this game means a lot for the program in the States and what they can do moving forward, and Hugh knows the importance of it as well.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I've thought about it all. Being the 50th, that is 24-25. Both teams are at 5-5. Like you just said, the winner gets to be 6-5 and claim a winning record for the year. For their seniors, for their coaching staff, it kind of thrusts you into recruiting. So there's a lot of reasons why this game is important to us. But I think we're growing. I think we're right on the cusp of being what I think we can be. But it's going to take one more class of recruiting to get us to where I think we can get back and say we're truly the football team that all the Grambling Knights want us to be.
Grambling Knights, I'm trying to figure out if there's a second G in that word or not. Let's go back now to the Southern side of things, focusing on their acting head coach, Sean Wallace, who continues to battle stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He's in all of our prayers. And what does he mean really to this team and the program as a whole?
Sean is an inspiration, man. If you know anything about Coach Wallace, he's been an inspiration even before the battle with pancreatic cancer. So now it's even more so as Coach Wallace is coming out and you're finding out the battle that he's going through. It just inspires the team. It's an inspiration to the Jaguar fan base and to just people around the world, and in particular those who know him personally like I do. This is just Sean continuing his fight and continuing his battle.
Yeah, and I've been here for just a short time, but in the SWAC, we're all family. And certainly that showed with the coaches at the Monday press conference.
I want to thank everybody for the overwhelming support that you have given me as we fight and win this battle with pancreatic cancer. And I plan on being around here for the 100th Bayou Classic.
Sean and I, it's bigger than football. It's a relationship. It's a brotherhood. To be able to do this and help and honor him, it's a blessing.
To Coach Wallace, please know that we lift you up every day. We're there. We get it. This is bigger than football. Football is something we all love to do, but we're talking about life.
And let's keep talking about life, especially the gift of life, very precious, especially in the game of football. And one story that I think is not getting talked about enough around town, we got it right here. It involves a father and a son and a coaching matchup that's never before seen in the history of this game. NBC 33's Chessa Boucher has the story.
Well, I want my son to do well those other 10 games. The 50th annual Bayou Classic is a family affair. Nothing rings more true for the Scott family. Chris Scott Sr. is the defensive ends coach at Southern and knows a thing or two about the Bayou Classic. In fact, he was the Bayou Classic MVP back in 1988. Scott Sr. will make history Saturday afternoon as he squares off against his son, Chris Scott Jr., who will be on the other sideline with Grambling, becoming the first father-son duo to coach against each other in the Bayou Classic.
Oh, he said, "Man, this is my stomping ground. This is my legacy, and I'm big coach." That's what he say. So you lit coach. So he makes that a big point, man. And being MVP, I mean, I got to give a lot of credit to my dad because that's a phenomenal job, and I believe he still holds the leading tackler record for Southern University. That's a hard kind of foot to follow, But hey, I won the Rose Bowl, and I did some things too. So, he's not the only one who's accomplishing some things.
Both senior and junior started their college coaching careers at Southern, and both coached at Grambling as well.
The family is kind of split. My wife and my youngest daughter, we're Jaguars, but all of his siblings, they pulling for him. So I understand that, but he got to remember, I'm the daddy. So I know how he thinks, I know how he talks, and so I always know what's on his mind. So I think I got the advantage.
So, hey, it's a young man's game, so, hey, he gotta take the L. So I told him it's definitely going to be the battle of the little and big coach this game. The little coach is now the big coach, so he's going to make sure he tell me that at the end of this game.
Junior is one of 6 and the only child to follow in his father's footsteps, and at a young age, he emulated his dad on the sideline when he was coaching the Tigers under the great Doug Williams.
As me being a little kid in 2001, 2002, I used to hold like the cards for the headset. I used to hold Coach Williams headsets, so I'm looking at myself, on the sideline like, man, I never in that, that moment ever thought I'd be coaching in that game on the sideline at Grambling and things like that. So yeah, it's deep.
Chris looks like me. He talks like, yeah, I mean, he's every bit of me. I mean, he is. I'm truly proud. I'm proud of him. I'm proud of his accomplishments, what he's doing. But I know he's going to be a great coach. That's all he talks about. He dreams football, man. Want to be a head coach. I told him, you just be patient, and humble yourself. But it really hadn't hit me yet. But I guess when I see him on the other side, we'll see how it goes with that.
What a story. 50 years of the Bayou Classic and still plenty of history being made. A little later, we're going to introduce you to some of the icons of this historic rivalry. But first, up next, we're breaking down where it all went wrong for Eric Dooley in his short tenure on the Bluff. Plenty more coming up on our pregame show that I think the Human Jukebox would call outstanding.
We now return to the Jaguar Nation Bayou Classic Anniversary Preview, sponsored by Care South Medical and Dental.
Pat Timlin, Reggie Flood, all roads lead to New Orleans. Where have you heard that before?
Yes. That is a famous saying. All roads lead to New Orleans. It is an exciting time. Bayou Classic is here.
I've heard it plenty of times from the former head coach at Southern University, Eric Dooley, who, if he attends the Bayou Classic, will not be taking the team bus down that road to New Orleans, as the school dismissed it during the bye week. The Dooley era is done before the coach could even finish his second year on the Bluff, despite getting a 4-year, $1,200,000 deal. What do you make of that and how quickly they moved on from him?
I think it was necessary. If you look at what Coach Dooley has done over the 2-year period, I know it doesn't seem like a long time, but it's just the body of work over that 2 years. It just wasn't a good body of work. I think he only had 1 win versus a team with a winning record over that period of time. And that just doesn't work, not to mention the fan base was disgruntled. And it just seemed to be a disconnect between Coach Dooley his players and the fan base, the situation with quarterback, him not wanting to make changes, some of what the fans felt like was gaslighting and not taking responsibility for some of the things that were going on. I think all of that played a part into it, and Southern made a move that they felt like they had to make at that time.
Yeah, Athletic Director Roman Banks finally giving us some input on why he thinks this had happened right now.
I think hiring Coach Dooley was a great boost for us. He was able to stimulate the fan base. Just looking at where we were last year versus this year wasn't the expectation. And for me, it's just didn't have a clear version of the game plan going forward. It was, very frustrating at times. To the fans, to the people, to the media, we missed this one on me, and we're going to make some changes.
Taking accountability is what they call that in the business. Fans certainly wish the changes came earlier. Let's just look at these wins. You kind of alluded to it. Here's the marquee wins on the left, the bad losses on the right. When you look at it, what stands out to you?
Just the bad losses, the opportunities that were missed. Having Jackson State at your home stadium, having Florida A&M at your home stadium with the opportunity to take the lead in the SWAC. Just losses that depressed the fan base. And, you won a Bayou Classic last year. That's a good thing. But when you look at the overall record and the overall opportunities missed, it just did not work.
Yep, and the show must go on, as they say. Terrence Graves now in charge running this ship. He did it 2 years ago when Grambling fired Broderick Fobbs, something that I don't think people really anticipated coming. Yet now it's him and Wallace running the show. Kind of talked about what they bring to this team, and certainly it's more than what they had going on, at least on the spirit-wise and revitalizing this fan base. But let's turn the page now and see how Hugh Jackson has done in his 2 years there in Grambling. Remember, when Terrence Graves took the job for the interim at Grambling, he was not rewarded with the full-time position. Instead, it went to Hugh, and I can't imagine that made Graves very happy. But Jackson, he inherited a 4-7 Grambling team fresh off a Bayou Classic victory, eager for rejuvenation, and plenty has happened since that moment where he said they need to take the G off the helmet and earn it, right?
Yes, a lot has happened since that moment. That wasn't a very popular move among the players or the fan base, but a lot has happened. They got the G back, and they went out, they hit the transfer portal. They've been on the recruiting trail. They got a quarterback, Crawley, who is a transfer from Alabama State, brought him in. Coach Jackson seems to be very confident in him. Now they lost some close games. They lose a 1-point game to Alcorn. So Grambling is not far off from being in a battle for the SWAC West champion.
Yeah, they just needed to get it going at the right time. Sounds like a team that both you and I cover deeply.
Yes.
And you alluded to it, Miles Crawley has definitely improved this passing game. You could just see the change from year to year. But the defense not getting better, that's not really something that you expect, or the score defense, at least I should say, when you have a guy like Sundiata Anderson and the playmakers they have on defense.
Yeah, you expect the Grambling's defense to be better. They seem to be putting it together at the right time, at least the right time for the Bayou Classic, maybe not the right time to compete for the championship, but they seem to have gotten better. Of course, they played Pine Bluff a few weeks ago, and they seem to play better in that game, but it's Pine Bluff, so it's hard to gauge. But Grambling's defense, I think, let them down at certain moments during this season, but if they can put it together in the Bayou Classic, then I think it'll really be a Bayou Classic.
Yeah, it's something that everybody wants. When these two teams face off, anything can happen. Stick around, because later we're featuring the man just referred to as Coach at Southern and how he became a beloved son of the Bluff. But first, we're making the trip up I-167, I should say. I haven't done it myself. The lasting impact of the greatest coach in HBCU football history. That's next.
We now return to the Jaguar Nation Bayou Classic Anniversary Preview, sponsored by Care South Medical and Dental.
Welcome back to this special edition of Jaguar Nation, getting you ready for the 50th edition of the Bayou Classic. I'm Pat Timlin. He's Reggie Flood. Perhaps my favorite thing about getting ready for this year's Classic was just talking to people and hearing things about this game. You can't find them on the internet. It's kind of an oral legend most of the time about things in this game, right?
Yes, it is. the records, sometimes when they say throw the records out of the window, sometimes the records have actually been thrown out of the window. So it's hard to find concrete information on the Bayou Classic. And so you have to go by the folklore of it a lot of times. But with the recent history, I mean, the game started in 1974, which seems like it was a long time ago, but it really isn't. There's video evidence out there. There are a lot of things out there. There are a lot of people who attended the first Bayou Classic who are still out there. I remember seeing a video around, and matter of fact, this is the 1979 Bayou Classic that's showing right now. That was my first Bayou Classic. And so, you know, I remember seeing videos of people flying in from around the country to see the Bayou Classic and to see the Superdome in 1974.
So many stars. Doug Williams, you saw him. You saw DeMarcus Miller. He's a coach on the Southern team. He's had an impact in this game. Plenty of coaches on the Southern roster have actually had an impact. How about Ladarius Skelton, the only player in this game's history to be a 4-time Bayou Classic MVP? Every day I learned something new about this game, Reggie. And my favorite part is that when you go all the way back to the history, there are two names that stand out above them all, especially when you talk about Scotlandville and North Louisiana football. The best coaches in HBCU football history, from what I can gather, standing out. Let's go to the one who's up there in Grambling. And although he's no longer with us here on the earth, his impact is felt every day by a program he gave his life to. Here's Tim Owens from the G-Men Nation team on the legacy of Eddie Robinson for this year's Grambling squad.
He's just a staple in sports. Just a lead team, and he was a leader of men. You know, he built so many traditions here that has kept us and taken us so far.
Eddie Robinson hasn't coached a game at Grambling State since 1997, but his impact will forever be felt in the Tiger football program.
You know, I try to make sure that I keep his name in the forethought of our players, and they really understand, you know, Coach Robinson is an icon, and we all know that. I just think it's important for me to always give them the history, have them understand what you're really fighting for and playing for, because Grambling was the standard.
Coach Rob set the standard at the G. The grandfather of Grambling State football finished his career with 408 wins and just 165 losses.
He's kind of like the top dog, and, you know, this glory that we have, you know, in this football thing. So, you know, we give all kudos to him. He kind of started off for us. So, you know, he's a great legend that we all honor.
You know, he really went into the school and made it where this is, you know, a school of champions, a school with rich history.
Robinson didn't just win on the football field. He affected the lives of his players, leading them down a positive road in life.
I appreciate everything I got playing on Coach Eddie Robinson. It's made a difference on me in all levels of life, as a man, as a husband, as a coach, you know, as a professional.
Robinson built a culture that makes this university undeniably special and generational.
I would say kind of built a pipeline and a dream. You know, Grambling is more of a, you could say, a dream. You know, our motto is where everybody is somebody. And so he kind of just built this dream school here.
Thanks, Tim and the Grambling squad. Eddie Robinson, not only the standard at the G, but really in college football as a whole.
Yes, he is. Coach Robinson, the legend that he is. I had a chance to meet him when I was a younger guy, and everything that you hear about him is true. Like, he was really a great man, not just a football coach, but a great man. Even though I was from Southern and he knew I was from Southern, he welcomed me into Grambling and just invited me in, told me that it was funny. They were having team meetings and he said, "It's nothing you can learn here. We're going to beat y'all anyway." So yeah, Coach Robinson, the legend, when they say a legend, he's that in the truest sense of the word.
Yeah, and just the players that he cranked out of there were legends as well. Buck Buchanan, Doug Williams, just to name a few.
Ernie Ladd.
Over 200 NFL and CFL players came through Grambling under the watch of Coach Robinson. Certainly missed, and if he was at this game and hopefully at the 100th Bayou Classic like we're talking about later,
yes,
that legacy would always be felt.
Exactly.
Later in the show, we've got an icon standing by who covered Eddie Robinson in the Classic all the way back in 1974. But first, you can't talk about Robinson in the Bayou Classic without mentioning Richardson. An exclusive with the former Jags coach is up next.
We now return to the Jaguar Nation Bayou Classic Anniversary Preview, sponsored by Care South Medical and Dental.
We are just over 30 minutes from kickoff here at NBC 33. Pat Timlin, Reggie Flood, doing our best to get you guys ready for the 50th edition of the Bayou Classic. But as I to try to, certainly, I don't want to compare men who got Southern to that standard that they are at, but certainly we have one that we were able to talk to and prepared for the Bayou Classic for 17 seasons to get a little understanding of what it takes to coach a team to victory at the Dome. Jared Paul Joseph sat down to legendary Pete Richardson for an exclusive.
Pete Richardson coached 17 years at Southern University, but when he first arrived on the Bluff, the coach from Winston-Salem State did not get the warmest welcome.
Not to impact because we don't keep football coaches too long. And I told him I wasn't going any place.
Richardson's confidence paid off. During his first year in 1993, he led Southern to a 31-13 win against Grambling. But his first time being part of the Bayou Classic was an eye-opening experience.
What was the atmosphere like your first time coaching it on the sidelines?
Going to an experience of Winston-Salem State to the experience of the Bayou Classic is entirely two different things. It's almost like big-time football. You understand that the fan base the expectations was real high at Southern University.
And he met all expectations. Richardson won the Bayou Classic 8 years in a row, but his 7th victory in 1999 stands out above the rest.
You're down 31-10 at halftime. What do you tell the team and how do you keep them engaged going into the third quarter?
We knew that it was going to be a struggle. What I didn't want to do was go in and try to embarrass them. We're just going to try to get a little bit at a time. We're going to try to cut it half, then we're going to start making plays, and all of a sudden it got to a point that we pulled off a couple big plays, beat an outstanding football team there at the last minute.
Where does that rank as far as your Bayou Classic championships?
Well, I think that it ranks at the top. You play the Bayou Classic for the fan base. Your job is to go down and win it. And that's one of the things that we try and instill to them. You're going to have a good time after you win, because that's the expectations. That's what the fan base wanted, and that's what the assistant coaches and we tried to instill in them to make sure we came out on top so we could be successful too.
Covering Southern football for your Go Nation, I'm Jared Joseph.
Jared, when they say Southern is the standard, Pete Richardson is that standard, especially in the Bayou Classic.
Yes, Coach Richardson came in, and this is really where he made his mark. I mean, he was the great coach. First season, he comes out 10-11 wins, but the Bayou Classic versus Coach Eddie Robinson is where he made his mark. And the ironic thing about it is the two winningest college coaches in Louisiana history, Eddie Robinson and Pete Richardson.
Sheesh.
So, I mean, the icons of football, of Louisiana football, right there in that game, coaching against each other. And just the history of Southern football goes through Pete Richardson, the legend, the living legend. He's one of the last ones left. And so you want to give him his flowers while he's here and recognize him. But that Bayou Classic, it almost became, for a while, it seemed like it became Pete Richardson's Bayou Classic. He was so dominant in it. And so when you look at Coach and you see him here and he's able to enjoy it again, it really kind of makes me smile and makes me feel good to watch and thank him for the memories that he's provided watching those Bayou Classics. And that was also one of my most memorable Bayou Classics too, the comeback victory.
Yeah, how could it not be?
Yeah.
You mentioned he's still around. You see him at everything. We've seen him plenty of times the past few weeks, and you can hear him on the radio broadcast alongside Chris Powers and another legend who we got standing by. Because stick around, the best game of the year is about to kick off. But earlier this year, these two teams showed how we are all a family in the SWAC. But first, standing by, a man, again, who made history, and he's going to share some of his all-time favorite memories, which I bet include hearing that amazing human jukebox.
We now return to the Jaguar Nation Bayou Classic Anniversary Preview, sponsored by Care South Medical and Dental.
Welcome back into the studio. I'm Pat Timlin. He's Reggie Flood. Up to this point, we've been able to talk about some legends behind the two great institutions that are Southern University and Grambling State. But you know what they say about greatness?
What's that?
It attracts more greatness.
Exactly.
Like us and our suits wearing the same color. We didn't plan it, but again.
It happens sometimes. Great minds
think alike.
Exactly.
NBC 33 Sports Director Brian Holland is standing by with someone who knows a thing or two about the Bayou Classic. Brian.
Hey, Pat. Yeah, sitting here with a living legend. The first black sports reporter in Baton Rouge, Henry Baptiste, joining us. Clear who he's rooting for in this ball game.
No doubt about it.
The Columbia Blue and Gold, for sure. But attending every single Bayou Classic except for one, and we're celebrating 50. So that's a lot. That's pretty cool. Just kind of wanted to get a broad strokes look back on this classic. And I remember growing up as a young boy, I didn't know what an HBCU was at the time, but I knew I could watch college football and it was going to be on NBC.
Right.
And so I grew up watching Southern and Grambling. I didn't know where Southern and Grambling were because I grew up out of the state, but I would watch this game every single year. Historically, how would you kind of explain this game and where it's come?
It has come a long ways. I remember the very first Bayou Classic. It was played in Tulane Stadium and actually was not called the Bayou Classic that first year. It was just a big game between two historical black schools played at a neutral site. And the attendance for that ball game was 76,000 plus. But you know, a lot of people wonder about why this game has become such a big game. It's continuing to get bigger and bigger. There's just nothing better than the Bayou Classic in this state, I guarantee you that. The big push for HBCUs came about a few years ago. The only black schools you would remember, or black people would know anything about, was Southern and Grambling. That's why it's so important for us to keep this game going, because it's our heritage and it's a tradition.
So what does the future maybe look like to you?
I don't see it getting any smaller.
Right.
And I think the networks recognize this. NBC came to the table maybe 3 or 4 years ago and said, hey, we want to carry this game at no cost. And I was at one of those meetings in New York when they said that. I said, well, hooray for the HBCUs.
How about your favorite moment? Maybe not the best game, but just most memorable moment through these years.
I guess being at all the classics, they were all memorable. In the 10th or 11th year, Grambling had an impeccable record. Doug Williams was quarterback. And I think on the second or third offensive series in that ball game, Doug got knocked out with a broken leg. But the bad part about it, when Doug got knocked out, Eddie put in the second string quarterback, and he was almost as important as Doug that afternoon. He defeated us. So I said, you just can't win some of them. It's been nip and tussle, but we finally got on the same winning track with Grambling when Pete Richardson became the coach at Southern University. Pete Richardson has never, when he was coaching, never lost to an Eddie Robinson coach team. Never lost. He can chalk that one up. I remember that, coach. So that's one of the good moments I can remember.
So from that perspective, what does it mean personally to you?
Well, I can brag about the fact that I never missed a Bayou Classic, but I get a chance to be, I guess you would say, an ambassador for the university. You come to a few ball games, you'll be back. I tell you what, you come and you eat a piece of that chicken, and I guarantee you'll start coming back. If you went in there one time, I got you. You're not going anywhere.
I've always been well fed there on the bluff whenever I get over there. It's called soul food for a reason, and the soul of this game certainly going to live on for a long, long time. We appreciate your time and obviously joining us here, getting ready for the Classic.
And we certainly appreciate Channel 33 for being a part of the Classic. And I think for a few years, 33 was the station that was carrying the Classic, if I can recall, NBC.
Yep.
Okay, so hooray for that. We'll be around, guys.
If that doesn't get too pumped up for the game, I don't know what will. Pat, let's send it back over to you.
Thanks, guys. Just awesome stuff. Stick around because we're revisiting our top storylines and what you should be watching for, including up next a special bond formed between Southern and a Grambling player in need, a story with an update that you do not want to miss.
We now return to the Jaguar Nation Bayou Classic Anniversary Preview, sponsored by Care South Medical and Dental.
Each moment we get closer and closer to kickoff here on NBC 33. I'm Pat Timlin. He's Reggie Flood, 50th edition of the Bayou Classic. kind of like a big family reunion, right?
It is. It is a big family reunion, and it's evident pretty much everybody that I know has a family member. If they're a Grambling family, they have family that went to Southern. If they're a Southern family, they have Grambling family members who went to Grambling, myself included. So, it's really a family reunion, and people have a misconception sometimes. They think of it as a rivalry, which it truly is a rivalry, but it's a family rivalry. Most of these families, and I know for mine, speaking in particular for mine, we would have Thanksgiving dinner on Thursday, and a bunch of us would pile up at the house, and then Thursday evening after dinner, we start talking trash about the game, and then Friday we get up and everybody would head down to New Orleans. The Grambling people would go their way, Southern people would go their way. We wouldn't speak to each other for a day or so. Then on Sunday we get back together after the game. We kind of, whoever won or lost would rub a little salt, talk a little trash, and then we would go on about our way. But it was our family tradition, and a lot of families are like that. This is really, when they talk about a rivalry, but this is really a family tradition.
Yeah, and family members like to bicker, but when they're at their lowest, they always pick each other up,
Exactly.
I should say. Earlier this year, we had a special moment when tragedy hit here in Baton Rouge for one Tiger, but a pack of Jaguars came to lift his spirits. Southern and Grambling just can't stand one another. It shows every year at the Bayou Classic. But when disaster strikes, Southern hospitality shows. On Jaquavius Richmond's birthday,
Man, it's just love, bro. Like, just to see all these people here from Southern, even though I don't like them at all, but like just to have the love from them, bro, it means a lot. It warmed my heart just to see how much love, you feel me?
Doesn't matter if you're Grambling, Southern, FAMU, Jackson State, we're all football players, we're on the SWAC, it's all family.
Richmond suffered severe neck and head injuries during the LSU-Grambling game that could have left him paralyzed.
Bro, it's not about football no more, bro. It's about me living, you feel me? Like, I could have lost my life.
You never want to hear about a football player falling. Even if you might not know him or know what really happened, we all feel that because we're all players, and you never know when it can be your last snap.
Breaking your neck in 5 different places, nah, bro. You don't be alive from that. You feel me? God had a calling for me.
After successful surgery at Our Lady of the Lake, he's been at the Neuromed Center here in BR, where his recovery continues to progress.
He has been very motivated, and it is shown with a lot of support from his family and friends. Today, we were able to walk without using any type of assistive devices, which was awesome.
Step by step, okay, I couldn't move my hands at first. I can move them now. Thank you, Jesus. I couldn't walk. I can walk now. Thank you, Jesus.
While he's thankful for the love from Jaguar Nation, Richmond still reps his Gram fan.
Oh, I can't wait till that Bayou Classic, because these Southern people, they showing love and all, but we ain't going to show no love out there at that Bayou Classic, I promise.
Folks, I held back tears during that interview, but when I saw this video before Grambling's homecoming, I grabbed my tissue box and got to sobbing. Weeks after being removed on a stretcher at LSU, he was back in North Louisiana with his team, being positive as ever. Now he's still going through treatment here in BR, and if you'd like to donate and help cover some of his expenses, the school unfortunately cannot. The GoFundMe for JQ is still listed on our website, brproud.com. And when we talked with Hugh Jackson earlier in the week, he really appreciated the efforts from the Southern staff and said he expects to see JQ on the field at the Dome. How great is that?
Yes.
We're so close to kickoff, so we're telling you what to watch for a little bit later in the show. But first, talking Tigers, Jaguars in 2023. How did they end up with identical records coming into the biggest game of their season? But folks, this is your warning. Grab your cup, fill it up with your drink, and get ready for the greatest show on turf.
We now return to the Jaguar Nation Bayou Classic Anniversary Preview, sponsored by Care South Medical and Dental.
Reggie Flood, Pat Timlin, let's put on our conductor's hat. Come aboard the roller coaster that is the 2023 Southern football season with the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. This ride started at the top in the preseason when the Jags were picked to win the SWAC West. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember.
Feels long ago.
Yes.
And now here we are 2 weeks ago at a barrel roll, if you will, when the Jags fired Eric Dooley. Let's start from the beginning and figure out where it all went wrong for the Jags. Remember that party? It started in Montgomery against an Alabama State team that did not have high expectations, but clearly no one told the Hornets that. They scored enough to hand Southern an opening day loss. But these first few games were non-conference. Despite playing SWAC teams, it's okay. They did not count in the standings. So Jag Nation showed out for that home opener, their first sellout at Mumford since 2000. Turnovers, Toom Southern, and TC Taylor continued what Dion started. Domination of Dooley. And then Alabama A&M came with a bluff, and former Bulldog Gary Quarles Jr. put up a 2-touchdown day against his old team to power Southern to their first win, and the momentum carried to Pine Bluff the following week to start SWAC play with back-to-back dubs. Then FAMU came to town. Another high-energy affair ensued. Southern even had a chance to win with under 2 minutes left. Play calling doomed the drive from the start. So let's look at where they were. The standard at Southern, they always talk about it. Certainly this felt substandard.
Yeah, definitely this season, the standard kind of fell off as the season went along. They started out the season at Alabama, and everybody had high hopes for this team. Everybody thought this team, after the last year, they thought this team would come in, they would get it together. Harold Blood gets his first start, and there's a lot of promise. And you get there, and we see some of the same issues from last year trickle over into this year. The offense has a hard time getting started. They don't ever pretty much get started during the whole year leading up to this week.
Yep.
And so that created frustration among the players. You could see it. You could see it on the bench. Jackson State, a big opportunity, even though it was a non-conference game, it's a rivalry. If for most fans, Jackson State is Southern's biggest rivalry. It's the most heated rivalry. So regardless of whether it was a conference game or not, fans wanted that game, the players wanted that game, but they just could not seem to pull it together, and we saw that go on and on throughout the season. They beat teams that they were supposed to beat.
Yep.
That they had an obvious advantage, but when it came to games where they were evenly matched, then they just couldn't get it done. And even in the Alabama A&M game where Southern won the game, Alabama A&M was literally inches from tying that game and sending it into overtime.
Yeah, and before we move on to that second half of the season, the Jags, well, they stood tied atop the SWAC West with 3 teams, all of them still left on their schedule. If you get it done against them, you're back in the SWAC championship. One of those happened to be Grambling, the team they're going to play here today. And for a brief time, for the Jags, the things did take care of business. Against Lincoln, California, they put up a season-high 45 points. It's something you expect against lesser competition. Plus, they kept it going on the road in Jacksonville with an easy victory over Bethune-Cookman. You had moments like this, kickoff returns for touchdowns to start the game, and you couldn't help but feel good. But then came a fateful day in late October against Texas Southern, who had only one SWAC win to their name. They had SU on the ropes late in this one until everything went the Jags' way. Fumble recovery for a touchdown, a 54-yard field goal to force overtime, and a walk-off rushing touchdown by Kendrick Grimes. The Jags had a date with Alcorn for sole possession of the West on the line. All eyes were on the reservation, but a son of Baton Rouge for the Braves took over and almost single-handedly sent Jaguar Nation home sad that day. Still, not all hope was lost. Dooley needed to beat his former team, something Southern had no problem with last year, and the Jags led at halftime, but the offense had 0 first downs in the second half. And again, the offensive guru failed to put together a competent 2-minute drill game plan. And just like that, Southern, Eric Dooley era over before he could spell jambalaya.
Yes. Yeah, it was a quick run. Some would say a painful run, but it was what it was. And I couldn't do any better than the way you summed it up. I mean, that was pretty much the season right there. And we're at this point now, and once again, one of the teams in the Bayou Classic is coming in with an interim coach who happens to be the same guy. But it is what it is. Southern, disappointing season, I think. Picked to finish first in the West. End up not even making it to the championship. And it's basically a reboot. They have to start all over again.
And that's not something you expect when you sign a coach to a 4-year deal less than 24 months ago. Stick around because we're going to dive back into our top storylines from the top of the show. And, there was this ultimate outsider, Pete Richardson. Now it's up to these Jags to get the job done. Stick around. We'll be right back.
We now return to the Jaguar Nation Bayou Classic Anniversary Preview, sponsored by Care South Medical and Dental.
Less than 10 minutes until the 50th Bayou Classic is underway. Pat Timlin, Reggie Flood, getting you ready for kickoff with our top storylines once again. And the biggest thing that stands out to me is the message Southern is sending with putting Sean Wallace as the acting head coach to lead the Jags on the field for this historic game.
Yeah, Coach Wallace is an inspiration. He's always been. He was a great player at Southern, the Bayou Classic MVP, and now with him fighting cancer, he's going to be on the sideline. He's going to try to, bring that fight to the players. The players already love him. They're going to go out and play hard for him. But Coach Sean Wallace has set a standard. When you talk about Southern having a standard, Coach Sean Wallace is an example of that.
And he's met that standard as an MVP of this game. He knows a thing or two about winning here. And he's paired alongside Terrence Graves, who 30 years of experience in the conference. He told us earlier, and he was in this moment 2 years ago. He's got a victory from the Bayou Classic underneath his belt. What edge do you feel like he brings to the Southern team that Dooley didn't have that's ultimately going to help the Jags, and why they made this switch up in leadership?
It's the fire. Coach Graves is a fiery guy. He's going to get those guys fired up, and he's going to keep them focused. He understands what needs to be done to get a victory, and I think his experience is going to lead them through. We've seen him do this before at Grambling. I think he can do the same thing, if not better, at Southern.
Yeah, and you see him walk off the field there, a champion lifting a trophy. Something the Jags hope to see him do in Columbia blue and gold this year. Last year, remember, we sat here and talked about this as well, the quarterbacks, a decision that every Southern fan on the Bluff has an opinion on. This last game, we saw them alternate reps. Deshaun McCray, remember, he was at MVP last year, and we didn't think he should have started the game.
Yeah.
Here we come this year. Harold Blood started every game for the Jags. Do you put him at quarterback, or do you see what Noah Bowden, the former Grambling player, can bring to the table?
I think you see whoever. I don't know if it's Noah Bowden. I don't know if it's Harold Blood. But I think that Southern is going to have to do something to shake up the offense. Harold Blood has had a lot of opportunities, hadn't quite worked out. Noah Bowden, I think, is a guy that you're going to have to look at, especially going against his former team.
Yeah, and I think when you look at Bowden, he brings that big arm. And when we talked to him in fall camp, he said he wants to be a physical beast. He wants to be someone who, when you see him on the field, you think he's that guy. Certainly there's been some whispers coming out from practice about, competition's back open. Every quarterback got reps this last week of practice. Who will take the field? Certainly something we're interested in. Remember, Willie Totten calling the plays for Southern. Let's rewind, though, see what's gone wrong these final 2 weeks, final minutes before kickoff. I'm really interested to see what you think went wrong these past 2 weeks and how the Jags can fix it on the field today.
I think one of the things that went wrong was that the coach was kind of stuck in his ways. I think he wanted to do what he wanted to do. He had some habits, some things that he wanted to execute, and I just don't think the team was capable of executing. I think the other teams in the conference Southern became predictable. They knew what Southern was going to do, and even in the Alcorn game before this, they said that Southern was predictable. They knew. So I think all of those things played a part in it.
And it's kind of the switch up that we have here, a new blood for a game where anything can happen, the Bayou Classic. Reggie, before we go, we've got so little time left in the show. I wish we had more to talk about this game. Give me a score prediction for today. Who do you think comes out on top, and what's it going to be?
I don't do scores, but I'll say this. They're going to be 11 on offense, 11 on defense, and 11 on special teams, and they'll play for 60 minutes or however long it takes to get a final score.
About that final score, will it be a walk-off field goal like we've seen? Will it be defensive stand? Will it be a touchdown leading drive, or will it be a blowout? Give me at least that.
I think defense stands tall in this game,
as it has all season for the Jags. That'll do it from us here in Baton Rouge. Thanks for tuning in, and be sure to do so on the radio to hear Flood, and right here on NBC 33 for post-game reactions in the Dome from myself. For Reggie Flood, I'm Pat Timlin. Go Jags.